announcements first before we jump into our program. I need to announce something very important. One of our longest members is celebrating 30 years as a member of Tiger Bay. And that is George Burke. Would you please stand up? We'd all like to say congratulations. Thank you, George. Congratulations. And then we have missed some of the candidates who are running for office. Monica will come around with the microphone. If you'll please stand up and be recognized if you are a candidate for office.
Hi, Steve Galvin. I'm running for City Council for District 8.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Fries. I'm running for City Council District 4.
Wonderful. Congratulations, wonderful. Today's timers and board members are Martha Lenderman and Marla Short. Thank you so much. The rules for the Fending Club question and answer session are on your tables. Please take a look at them. Remember, only members may ask a question or the young timers. You have 45 seconds to frame your question, or you'll be hit with the gong or ring a bell, or the cane will take you away, something along that line. Please wait for the microphone. Monica will bring the microphone around. State your name loudly for the raters to put it down on the paper. Rating today's questions are Vice President Art O'Hara, Peter Schorsch, Neil McMullen, Past President Rick Edmonds, and Past President Jim Gillespie. Staffing into the microphone will be Monica Kyle. At this time, I would like to introduce Board Member Peter Schorsch for the introduction.
Quick, somebody wake up Jim Kennedy. I have a note here from Ann and Art before I introduce Brad and Jeff. There was one change to the program. Councilman Danner asked that you do your best to interrupt him and ask long-winded questions. He reminds us that on City Council, he sits to the immediate right of Wendy Newton, so interrupting him with long-winded questions will make him get right home. For Pinellas residents, the most important result from the 2014 elections won't be whether Charlie Crist has unseated Rick Scott or the margin of victory for Bill Young. No, the issue on the 2014 ballot, which may have the most significant impact for Pinellas County, is whether to build an advanced transportation system featuring light rail and a rapid bus system. To pass this referendum, supporters will have to do what those in Hillsborough County could not: convince voters to raise their own taxes in this era of austerity and budget cuts. While he will not be the one actually in charge of the campaign, the man at the center of this is Brad Miller, who came to Pinellas by way of North Carolina after 6 years at the Charlotte area transit system, now considered a leader in the area of public transit systems. Brad's resume also reads that he was the Chief Executive Officer of the Des Moines Area Regional Transit Authority, DART, which bills itself as the largest and fastest growing
say, to be honest, when I got a call from Peter about this, I was a little bit hesitant as the technical expert to come to Tiger Bay. My career has taken me from working in Washington, D.C. for my congressman to the Pennsylvania Senate Transportation Committee to a commuter rail system in Northern Virginia to transforming the transit system in Charlotte, and most recently, the obvious hotbed of urban mass transit, Des Moines, Iowa. This afternoon, I'm flying to D.C. as a member of the National Academy of Sciences National Research Council to learn about fascinating transit research on prioritizing the rehab and replacement of existing rail capital assets and innovative techniques in van pooling. I get a mild buzz whenever I talk about that. But I am honored and excited to be here at Tiger Bay because I know that I do have the responsibility for this initiative, the most important responsibility. I am accountable for the most important part of this, to build a 21st century mass transit system for Pinellas County. And the most important part of that whole thing is that it has to be good for our community. It has to be considered by the voters to be a benefit for St. Petersburg, for Dunedin, for Tarpon Springs. It's not really about issuing more press releases about record ridership, although I will note that we are up yet again to another record this month. It's not about that. It's not about building a train here in Pinellas County just because we're now the last metro area in the United States not to have one. Detroit is under construction right now. I know it has to be viewed about helping our community, or else people should not vote for it. I know this best from my experience in Charlotte. They passed a sales tax in 1998, 58 to 42. Incidentally, that was the same percentages that Hillsborough voted against it. Charlotte was, up till that point, known best as the home of NASCAR. But why did they vote for it? They didn't vote for it for transit. They voted for it mainly because their community did not want to become Atlanta. Their citizens voted in Charlotte that they thought that transit would help their community avoid Atlanta's experience of becoming a traffic-choked urban growth area. We here in St. Pete are kind of exactly in the same spot, but we're also different. This Green Light Pinellas initiative must be viewed as helping our community grow again, economically, sustainably, successfully. Over the past 2 months, I have spoken more than 40 times about our plans, and Councilman Kennedy knows that well, about the Green Light Pinellas plan that we voted on in November 2014. I go through my PowerPoint, trying to spend less than a minute on the rail plan. This document, which is now completed, I have a copy of it here. This is the 140-page summary. You can go on greenlightpinellas.com and look at all 3,000 pages, like some of my other board members have done. And I love to drone on and on about how this initiative will completely transform the bus system with bus rapid transit lines, new commuter park and ride lots, direct service for the first time to the airport and to downtown Tampa. But someone in the audience always says, nice speech, but we really know this is just a rail plan. I love buses. I love buses. I was a bus for Halloween, not once, but twice. When my family went to Europe, my dad took 500 rolls of pictures of buses in Paris and one shot of my family in front of the Eiffel Tower. I am the chair of the bus committee, of the committee of all of the transit systems in the United States bus chief executive officers for the American Public Transit Association. I try to ride the PSTA buses whenever I can. One of the coolest things I've ever seen in my whole life is when my wife and I were vacationing in New York City. And through my career, I have met tons of New York City Transit former employees. And there are 65,000 people that work for the New York City Transit Authority. And so there is an incredible disconnect, or two countries, the bus people and the rail people. And I walk out of this hotel in New York, and there are these two bus supervisors standing out there, and it was wintertime, and they had jackets that said NYCT buses. And they had huge letters, and of course I had to talk to them, and then they loved buses. They were so proud not to be part of the rail idiots. So I immediately went back to Des Moines, Iowa, and I got all my supervisors to change their codes that said Des Moines buses, as if we had a rail our population. Have young people consider moving here because there are new jobs here. That's probably the greatest lesson I got from Charlotte. The people that are riding their transit system, rail and the bus system in Charlotte, most of them didn't vote for it in 1988 because they didn't live there. The people that vote for it still live where they live, out in the suburbs with their two-car garages. And they still drive their car, just like they did. It's their kids. It's their kids that are riding it now. And instead of moving to New York City or DC, after they go to UNC in Chapel Hill, they move back. Now, 1% North Carolina ever goes to Duke because only people from New Jersey go to Duke. They all go to UNC. And they go back. They come back to Charlotte, and they live along the transit lines. They choose to do that. Now you drive down the Charlotte Rail Corridor, and at station after station, there's apartment complexes being built, one after the other. Some 4,000 units were built there just last year alone along that line. Those kids from Charlotte are moving into so they can take transit into the city for their jobs or watch the Charlotte Bobcats lose, whatever. Buses will always carry a majority of the riders, and I know under this initiative, for the first time here in Pinellas County, buses will be the choice of travel for people that have cars who live here. I know that doesn't really happen today very much. But to transform our community, I think for the better, we need to have a plan that has rail included as well. Another thing I do love is Tampa. Our plans must be designed to work in a regional context for the whole Tampa Bay area. I still think PSTA and Pinellas County are pretty darn regional with 24 municipalities, but my friend, I hope, Senator Latvala, doesn't necessarily think that's enough. He is right. A transit system that works for the entire Tampa Bay while still being responsive to customers would be better than what we have now. Our green light plans for both the buses and the rail have been designed to be very successful in Pinellas. But obviously they would work better with connections to West Shore and Tampa. I'm proud of Chair Danner and the PSTA board and the various county commissioners like Janet Long for seeing the benefits of regional mass transit solutions, maybe a little bit more than our friends over in Hillsborough. What I'm even happier is those discussions that happened last year have now birthed a new smart card system, a Tampa Bay-wide smart card fare system so that you could use that on any transit system someday from Lakeland all the way down to Sarasota. I'm thankful for Tampa for another reason. Without learning from the lessons of the failed 2010 referendum, we would be much worse off. We have a completed plan. We're getting rid of our property tax, so that most Pinellas property owners, the 1% sales tax will actually cost them less than what they're paying for a much less transit system that they have today. We're starting much earlier. They started 5 months in advance. We're 15 months out from this vote. With an outreach campaign that will hopefully get us an opportunity to get to the grassroots in a way the Hillsborough campaign just didn't have time to do. But probably just as important from learning the lessons from Hillsborough is learning the lessons from Charlotte, from Denver, from St. Louis, even little Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which just passed the sales tax. All of those places demonstrated that their transit investment would not just benefit those who rode it, but would benefit the entire community. Those city investments in transit are benefiting their community. They are. The new private development along the line in Charlotte has created $12 million a year in new property tax that is helping fund the police, the fire, the schools, the parks in Charlotte, benefiting that community. Polls taken in Pinellas even as far back as a week after the failed Hillsborough referendum show strong support for moving this conversation of how transit and transportation investments can help our community move forward. Tampa Bay Times, Bay News 9 poll this past December showed 60% of Pinellas residents were willing to spend tax dollars on rail. This is the Pinellas way. I am learning that. We do look beyond ourselves to what can help our community. We make decisions by consensus. By design, this whole green light plan is being done by consensus, as a dialogue with many political, business, and civic leaders engaged rather than one dominant leader. Believe me, I know it's going to be very hard. I feel like we're already behind, but I really do enjoy talking to people about buses and trains and my favorite movie. Because the ballot initiative is more about helping our community than it is to track the track gauge or bus manufacturers, I do appreciate this as a political issue, and that's why I am so happy to introduce my board chair. And he is really
because I really do also like to talk a lot about transportation, and I'm glad to be here to do this today. The best part of it, though, is for the next 45 minutes, we're not going to talk about it here. Now, but several years ago, when I was on the PSTA board, and I am chair of the PSTA board and vice chair of the MPO, and I represented both Mayor Foster and Mayor Baker on Sparta. Sparta is a 7-county transportation board that represents 7 counties, 6 transit agencies, 5 regional planning councils, 2 DOT districts, and about 57 cities. So it's a very large area to cover, but it really gives us that regional perspective of how far behind not only our community, but this area is on transportation investment. Several years ago, DOT came to the PSTA board and pointed out that while we are a peninsula and constrained on our growth, and 94% of the land that is buildable is already built on, they could improve our lane miles in the county by about 25% over the next 40 years or so. But also pointed out that our vehicle miles that we travel are increasing at 3 times that amount. And if you put those numbers together, there's a point where they converge where you have gridlock. We've got a pretty good system here in St. Petersburg. We can get around. We've got a great system, but all of you know that as you leave, you get on the Howard Franklin Bridge or US 19, you're stopped. So we had to do something different. We had to provide options for people. And transportation is expensive. This is an expensive project. But if you look at the numbers right now, we are spending $46 million a mile on US 19 and have done so for the last 10 years. And if you think about what that means when US 19 is finished, I don't know what that means to be finished, because there's another overpass coming after this one and after that one. But then you have to ask yourself, what's next? When US 19 is congested, do we start building Belcher Road to look like US 19? Or Almerton Road to be double decked? We can't pave our way out of this without a road system. We really have to give people options. Our area office on aging did a survey of not all elderly, 45, 55, and 65-year-olds about transportation. And when asked, when you can no longer drive, what will you do? And the answer that 96% of those groups said was, I don't know. Or the second answer was get a bicycle, which is even scarier. But we do. We've got some really great things going on. I applaud Brad. The board has moved forward. It's a challenging board. We have 15 members, and I've been on it for 8 years now, and I think probably the only unanimous vote we've ever had is to move forward on this project and ask the county commission to go to referendum in 2014. The county commission, and in a near unanimous vote, agreed to do that as well. I think there is a big difference in our county and Hillsborough and other counties. But like Brad said, with 24 cities, we've really got to build a consensus. People in Dunedin have a fantastic city, and they know they are the center of the universe. And all the rest of us are suburbs of Dunedin. And that's a good attitude for them to have, and we have to keep that in mind when we go and talk to them about the transit system there. So there is a fantastic opportunity here. We are way out ahead of it. I think this green light is the way to get involved early. Find out what it is. We've got the basic framework of a plan. We're going to listen to the input. We're going to hear from you as to how we can move it around a little bit, where we need more buses, less buses, things like that. And certainly what we hope is at the end of this year, if the plan is complete, there won't be anybody that can say, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't hear it. We've been going around for months. First, the alternative analysis, which was the rail component, that was about an 18-month study that looked at every single option of commuter rail and bus rapid transit, light rail, where the alignment should be, how many stops there should be, how do you get over to Hillsborough? It's very important. Howard Franklin Bridge is 50 years old. We've asked the DOT to move the study on the new bridge up to coincide with this effort. And looking at right now, how do you expand that bridge? How do you include a transit component on it to get to the airport, to get to the West Shore Intermodal Center? When you talk about jobs and growth, if you combine the Gateway and West Shore areas on each side of Howard Franklin, you have the largest employment center south of Atlanta. That's huge for us. That'll help our future, our growth, getting people here, getting jobs. But they're disconnected by that Howard Franklin because it's a parking lot during rush hour every day. So that's another piece that's very important. Some of the smaller things we're doing, the Central Avenue trolley, fastest growing route in the city. We just, instead of just having blue diesel buses with a number, changing the mindset a little bit, making them look like trolley that's been running a little over a year now. So people do want these options. They do want the transit. We have the network in place that'll make it work. And we're really looking forward to hearing from everyone and going on this exercise both this year to finish the plan, and then next year it will be handed off to the private sector to do a full 11-month campaign. We've got enough time to really inform everyone and listen and work on that. So again, thank you for the opportunity today, and look forward to your questions.
We'll let you all choose the questions. Don't raise your hand when you make the choose. How's that?
Hazel St. Petersburg. I've asked this question before, and I want to ask it again. Is anybody looking at something like a ferry, hovercraft that would go, say, from the EIER or the Moines to that place on the Hillsborough side that's close to the Tampa Museum? And then buses could meet these things. I think the timing might be a little difficult, but I should think that would take some of the tourists off the road, if not some of the business traffic. Is anybody looking at that?
It's a good question. The answer is yes. I think there is a guy that, by the name of Mitch Ranchek, that has really proposed something just like that recently. The thing about those ferry systems and where they work in the San Francisco area and New York is what you mentioned. Once you get off the boat on either side, how do you get to where you need to go? You need a transit system. You don't, unless you have your car, or the boat takes your car, which they're not talking about. You need a connection on land, and so that's what we're talking about. The other thing is that this discussion about a fixed highway system on land has been going on for 40 years here in Pinellas County. We're going to keep talking about it. So the process for the ferry system that just came up needs to go through a public dialogue process that, like we've been having about the streamline process at the same time.
Harvey Landris. Of the 15 most populous counties, all have sales tax rates of 7% or less. And only the most rural counties have sales tax rates of 7.5%. What is it that's so unique about PSTA and Pinellas that it can't manage within its existing finances the transportation issues like most of the other urban counties can?
Well, actually, we are managing within our existing finances. We have a balanced budget that we're required to pass every year. 3 years ago, PSTA, even though we have to pass a budget every year, we laid out a 3-year scenario to where we could manage the bus system we have without increasing the fares, without increasing the millage rate, but without cutting service. So we had a 3-year projection, and because, like Brad said, the ridership is up, the revenue is up, we've actually extended that into a 4th year, and the way it's going this year, we can extend it again. So we are managing within our budget. We also, though, all of our operating budget comes from ad valorem property taxes. And everyone knows what's happened to the ad valorem property tax base in the last few years. We've cut between $30 and $40 million out of our budget in the last 4 years, and have been able to sustain the basic system that we have. And really the question is that what you want? Is the minimal system, or is it time to vote for a better system?
If I have a second, I will also note that, as you probably know, Pinellas is perhaps different than some of the other metro areas in that a third of our sales tax is paid for by non-residents. Who's riding the buses and the trolleys today? Tourists are riding, and they are not paying that property tax. If you go on the IRS website, you can type in the value of your home versus the value of the sales tax. You will actually probably be paying less under this initiative if this passes in November 14th. Yes.
Terry Bryant. I lived in New York for 36 years, so I'm very familiar with that system. The system is that it's accessible by bus and train hookup. So how are you proposing that so many Florida is so widespread, especially Pinellas County and other places, how are you proposing to hook up where I live, for example, Lakewood, which is very lousy for bus service, to the rail system, when you don't have a proper bus system right now existing in those communities like that, or Pinellas Point and on over?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked me that one. This initiative is actually more about totally transforming the bus system that you see out there today than it is about the rail. So 60% of the money that would go toward buses. The system we have now today is a peanut butter thin system that does go from Tarpon Springs all the way down to Gulfport, but the buses come every hour. Especially down in South St. Pete, some of the buses only come every hour. People are riding them, but they're really not a choice if you have a car. Changing this current system to a high-frequency grid system, especially in St. Petersburg, so that the buses come much more frequently, will allow many more people to view the buses as a choice in their travel. It'll connect to the rail, or it'll connect right to their destination in a faster, better way.
Hi, I'm Leonard. My question is, when talking to an advocate of light rail, how do you convince them that the correct route has been chosen? And in choosing that route, how much of that decision is based on politics, and how much of it is based on traffic engineering science?
That's the exercise we went through with the alternative analysis, and the federal government is very strict on the data you use to pick the route. They will be on the hook for up to 50% of the cost to build that system, so they're not going to build something that they don't feel works. The method we used, we had several criteria for what we wanted from our community, but then it is data-driven. We have to go to the employment center. That's why it's going to Gateway. You have to go where your population is. If you can get someone to ride the bus system to work, that's 250 rides a year. If you're going to the airport, that's 4 or 5 times a year. So it is very data-driven. It's not politically driven at all. And if you overlay the employment map with the population map, it's a logical line, and that's what you've got. So,
Is that data map available for public view?
greenlightpinellas.com, PSTA.net, it's on all of them.
Here.
Peter Schorch. Senator Jeff Brandis, the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, has done some back-of-the-envelope math that if you do the cost of construction plus the operating subsidy, and you divide it by your own projections on ridership, you could actually buy each person a Prius and still have money left over. So to you, I ask, wouldn't it just be easier to buy everyone a Prius rather than build this light rail system?
Well, I think, first of all, how many people would like to see 14 million Priuses on US 19? And where are you going to park them when you get to wherever you're going? There's a whole lot more cost associated with an automobile. It costs $8,000 or $10,000 a year just in the maintenance and gas and fuel. In Pinellas County, right now, if you can afford a $150,000 house and 2 cars, if we can build a rail system to give you the option of having 1 car, you can afford a $250,000 house and 1 car. And it just gives people options that they currently don't have. There's a lot of costs associated with automobiles, parking garages, the amount of space downtown. Our beaches, the most valuable property in the county on the beach, paid bills for the parking lots for the hospitality workers and the tourists, because they have to rent a car, drive it to the beach, and park it all week. They don't know where to get there. So it
or to Fenway Park, they have a marvelous mass transit system that takes you there. At the Trop, there is no such thing. I was curious as to whether there's some plans, either with the buses and or the light rail, to transport the fans to the Trop.
Yes, there is. In both the alternative analysis on the rail plan, there is a stop right at the Trop, as well as the bus network that is on Central Avenue, is one of our largest corridors. I had a conversation with one of the Ray's top front office people about this exact subject and said if we had mass transit, we wouldn't be having the same discussion today.
I rode the Central Avenue trolley, which now does go late enough, even if they have extra innings, you can actually ride mass transit to the Trop today. I was riding it when our favorite fan, Hideki Matsui, was playing for the Rays, and the trolley was packed with all of these Japanese tourists staying at the Hilton downtown. Yes.
Carolyn Fries, Jeff, I think you said we were spending currently $46 million per mile on US 19. Can you define who we is? In other words, what entity is or entities are paying for that?
DOT is building that project, so us as residents of the state of Florida are paying that through that. Right.
I'm Greg Eagles. I was so pleased to hear you repeat the word bus so many times, because I fear that once this becomes an actual election, opposition is going to try to paste you with train. And given how much more expensive train is, and given how provenly cost-effective bus rapid transit is, and how much cheaper it is, I'm wondering why we couldn't start with BRT and be more assured of a victory at election time and grow into the train.
It's a great question that was hotly debated by the elected officials for two or 3 years over the last, when I got here. With transportation, it doesn't really necessarily work like that. It's not like a baby that grows up to be a train. The bus rapid transit does not create a train. Bus rapid transit systems, which we have in our plan for our Central Avenue and US 19 and the major corridors, do a very good job of carrying ridership. What they don't do, and what the advisory committee that selected rail as the alternative do, is generate economic development. Change the land use to transit going to develop in the direct way that every place that has implemented a rail system has done so. With a bus system that can move off that route, that I, as the CEO, can take that bus away from that street and move it onto this street, developers are not showing willingness to invest in something that can move. But a fixed guideway system like a rail will change the development in St. Petersburg and along the line dramatically.
Jim Gillespie, this is to Mr. Miller. In the agencies you have been associated with, given the pricing for the bus or transit system, or rail system, or combined, have you found that people who choose to take those to work or to shopping malls or elsewhere decide not to buy so many cars so that we can actually decrease the impact of heavy traffic at commuter times and downtown? In other words, would it lessen the expense to the user of the public system if they didn't have to buy another car, and do you have evidence that shows that?
Yes, absolutely. In all those cities I mentioned where I've worked, in Charlotte, and obviously the Washington, D.C. area, the housing and the development that is near and around the rail stations does not require you to have 1 or 2 cars. And so many people, especially young people, are choosing to go without a car and saving that money. I mean, that's what this initiative can do. That has been shown throughout the United States that this type of transportation investment. You see what's happening on US 19 up in Clearwater, where it's becoming a freeway and all the businesses are changing. Transportation impacts land use, no doubt about it, and this will impact it as well, but hopefully in a sustainable way that people can save money.
service on their roads from the past, and said, with this initiative, we're going to work towards getting cars off the road equal to a number in the past. And I don't know if they've reached that yet, but each year they are getting closer.
Carol McKay. You talked about businesses and tourists. I'm wondering about education and how this could help with the public schools and maybe be part of that transportation to save costs for the public schools and also to get young people to university.
And when you look at the T-Bardo map, the Tampa Bay region, the main spine of the entire 7-county region, in short, is USF Tampa to USF St. Pete. All the employment area, all the population, that is where the majority of it is. And the number of students at USF that are cross-enrolled is huge. So we're working with both of those universities right now to see how we can get those cars off the road. Again, if you've been out to USF Tampa as well as here, parking is an issue. So the opportunities there are fantastic. We do have committees that work with the school board to see if, with or without a rail initiative or this green light announcement, how can we better utilize 2 bus systems that currently spend a whole lot of money to work better together.
Judy Hunt, every place that you use as a reference has been an urban area, Detroit, Charlotte, Des Moines, but can you identify for us any county-wide spread out place like Pinellas that you announced?
Sure. Well, as you may know, Pinellas County is the most densely populated county across the whole county in the state of Florida. We're almost double the number 2 Broward County in our population density. Although it does seem like Pinellas County is a broad-based, spread-out system, it meets the densities that places like Denver or the Washington metro area is based on county systems. Just like this, we compete very favorably with our development density and certainly our total population.
I can call our last question.
Raymond Borg. You, Mr. Dana, first of all, I don't think it costs $8,000 to $9,000 a year to run a Prius. But getting back to the question, time is money. How much time, this lady who I think asked the question about Lakewood, I live in that area, right? So how much time is it going to take for me in your proposed system to get from Lakewood down to my office in downtown St. Pete versus me taking my diesel that runs on vegetable?
I'm glad to hear that you have a fry break. The whole system, by transforming the bus system to a grid system, will speed up the entire network of routes. We're all about safety, so we don't want the buses to go any faster than they do today. But what it will do, instead of the way the system now is where you have to hub in, I think the bus that goes to Lakewood now goes to Tyrone Square Mall. It doesn't even go. And so instead of having to hub in and transfer, you will have streamlined routes on the main roads that run very frequently. So you'll be able to get to downtown St. Pete much faster than you could on the system today, especially if it takes 2 hours because you're waiting at it. If the bus comes every 15 minutes, you can really speed up your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Councilmember Danner and Brad Miller. We appreciate you coming. I'm going to ask you to come back up here. I'm not going to let you sit down. I want to give you a mug as a token of our appreciation for allowing us to carve up a politician for lunch. I think, Brad, you may have 1 or 2 of these. So we appreciate that. And I'll ask you to stand because eventually we'll call the winner of the Tiger. I also want to remind you, we are looking at July 10th. I know that Your Vice President is working on solidifying that for the mayoral candidates for here the yacht club debate. And then we're also looking at August 14th as the St. Pete City Council, District 4 and 8. Those races will also be here at the St. Pete Yacht Club. And then September the 10th will be Speaker of the House, Will Weatherford. And now I need to announce our winner. Drum roll, please. Are you sure? Past President Gregory Wilson, come on up. We are adjourned.